To tell you about right now, Phoenix City Police making an arrest in the shooting death of Columbus State University graduate Ryan Bowles.
I've been covering crime in courts since early 2000s. It clearly has changed. One of the things you're seeing is many of the defendants are younger. It's not unusual now to cover a case with 16-year-old co-defendants, with 15-year-old co-defendants.
They say there are two teenage suspects in this case. There's a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. One is in custody, one is not, and the one who is not in custody is still believed to be armed and very dangerous.
I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for 40 years, 35 years on the newspaper side, everything from sports to investigative reporting, murder cases, aggravated assault, very serious crimes. And that's the one thing that has struck me, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. The defendants are younger, and those that are arrested and those that are tried. Most crimes are not random, absolute random by nature. From everything we know about the death of Mr. Bowles, it appears to be random.
Coming here and being in this department, you meet a lot of people who are not from here, and they chose this not because it was convenient or comfortable or safe. They wanted to pursue what they loved here because this is a great school. And one of those people that I met throughout my time here was Ryan Bowles, and he was one of the kindest people I have ever met. I remember the first time that I met him, he was wearing a Bigfoot t-shirt and it said, "I believe." And I was like, "You believe in Bigfoot?" And he said something along the lines of, "I like to give everything and everybody a chance."
There was another one that happened about a year earlier. John Burkus was walking his dog on the Phoenix City side.
32-year-old John Burkus and 40-year-old Darren Harris were gunned down in broad daylight Saturday, December 3rd, a day Harris's mother says altered her life forever.
Burkus just walked up on it. He ended up getting killed as well. And if you look at those two crimes, one in a bank parking lot, one on the Phoenix City Riverwalk, really struck a chord, struck a nerve. And John, now on the bench, he says this a number of times, I've heard it. He said, once a gun is entered into the equation, it changes everything. And he often says, and this is his phrase, not mine, guns don't have erasers on the end of them. So whatever happens with that gun, if it's a murder, whatever, there's no eraser, there's no turning back. It is what it is, and it will end up in Superior Court.
He was friendly to everybody and gave everybody a chance and would always be there to listen. So having something so tragic happen to somebody so kind who was not even from the city of Columbus, he was here doing what he loved. It was extremely heartbreaking, and I don't even think it's possible to put it into words, and honestly I think I'm still processing it.
Any crime is bad. Any murder is terrible. It's one too many. But when you see the random ones, those are the ones that kind of say, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? Those were both Phoenix City crimes, believe it or not.
Phoenix City is almost like, I feel like it's a direct family member of Columbus, Georgia. I mean, people who live just across the bridge in Phoenix City, oftentimes that if you ask them where they're from, they say Columbus, Georgia.
Columbus is going to a more community policing model. The Sheriff's Department with Sheriff Greg Countryman, the new police chief Stoney Mathis, are doing what they call crime suppression exercises, where they are going and getting folks that have warrants, known gang members, verified gang members. They're getting people off the street that could in all likelihood commit some of these most serious crimes. They clearly are rounding up. I mean, are they effective? The sheriff and police chief think they are. I mean, it's not for me to say if they are or aren't, but I mean, they clearly are making arrests. They're taking guns off the street. They're taking drugs off the street. So there's been some productive outcomes of it, I guess.
My perception of Columbus has definitely shifted. I don't know if that's just because I'm older and I'm more aware of what the real world kind of entails, but I would definitely say Columbus doesn't have as good of a reputation as I might have thought it did when I was growing up. I never thought I was in danger. Like, even weather, I always thought, Georgia is the safest place, but now that I have access to different resources and knowledge, I do feel like my perception of Columbus has declined, and I'm more aware of the negative reputation that it seems to hold.
Crime impacts economic development. Economic development is jobs, recruiting new businesses, getting existing businesses to expand and hire more people. There is no question the perception of a crime problem creates an atmosphere that thwarts economic development. Richard Smith, late state legislator, that was one of his big concerns before he passed, that, hey, we're in a position where these crimes, and he called it a gang problem at the time, is hurting our ability to attract quality jobs to our community. You still hear people say, I'd never go down there. I live 3 blocks from Golden Park. I walk by there on a regular basis. Some of the people who are the most vocal about the crime issue in Uptown or whatever don't come down here much. I was in downtown Columbus in 1989, the summer of '89. I was working for the Columbus Ledger on Broadway at 12th and Broad, and I would go out and hit golf balls in the median of downtown and not hit anything after 11 at night. We literally go out there and hit golf balls down Broadway, and we never hit a thing because there was nobody down there. There were no cars down there. It's changed. Downtown is now, you talk about places that are revitalizing. Our downtown is revitalized. It is the showcase of this city. It's where you take Aunt Bertha when she comes to visit you. You take her downtown to a restaurant. You show her the rapids. That's what's happened here. And there will always be people on social media. They'll call this Columbus, and they will talk about the crime stuff. We have a crime problem. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But is that problem all-encompassing and as bad as it appears on social media? Most of the time I'd say not, but don't misinterpret what I'm saying. We have a crime problem, but some people want to frame it as who we are. I don't think it's who we are. In that 2010, 2011 time frame, I covered one of my jobs at the newspaper was to cover the revitalization of downtown Columbus. In that 2010, 2011 time frame, they started putting the public art around there. The projects to get public art in downtown. And I'll never forget, there was a guy who brought a piece of art. I can't even remember which one it was now, but he was a sculptor out of Athens. And I went and interviewed him that night. He was eating at the loft or something, and I went and interviewed him as he installed. And I said, what do you think of downtown Columbus? Now, this is a guy from Athens. Athens got a great downtown. Obviously, it's next to the University of Georgia. He said, what strikes me about this town is it is dressed up for something that hasn't happened yet. We're now at a point 12, 13, 14 years later, it's happening. Our downtown is a showcase. It could be a little cleaner. It could probably be a little safer, but it's a downtown. It is the living room of our community right now.
Columbus has the potential to be a beautiful city, as what I have, I love Columbus, and I plan on staying here for a while, and so I just think, I don't really have any advice on how to improve it, because I don't know.
I think it's something you hear the cops talk about a lot, and I think we're in the era. See something, say something. Call 911. You see something that's out of the ordinary, you see something that doesn't look right, You're not an officer. Most of us are not officers. If you see something you think is criminal, something that just doesn't make sense to you, see something, say something. I mean, I think that's I think we can be more vigilant as a community. I mean, I know I'm more aware of my surroundings. I mean, I look at things in a more critical way than I did 10 or 15 years ago. That, probably more critical way than, I think the event was probably 9/11 that changed a lot of the way we look at things. But, I'm constantly aware of my surroundings. That's the time we live in. You have to be aware of your surroundings. If you see something, say something.
Absolutely. Just being a young woman, I feel like I have to be aware of my surroundings at all times. Like, I don't even like to park super far away from where I'm trying to go, because especially if I'm alone. If I'm with somebody, it's a different story, but when I'm alone, I try to not be alone as much as I can, just because I feel that there are certain risks, and no one to blame necessarily, but just you got to be careful.
We have a crime problem. They're working to solve the crime problem. And, it is, we're not the only community in the country facing this problem. I mean, you look, there are mass shootings just about every weekend now if you watch the news. We live in a community, probably more so than most communities of 200,000+ people. There are a lot of people in our community that own guns and know how to use those guns because of Fort Moore. We have a community where we have a lot of people that are very well educated on firearms and the proper use of those firearms. But we also have people in our community, as Judge Martin said, that have guns that shouldn't, and they use them for things they shouldn't, and there's not an eraser on the end of those guns, and that's just where we are.
I don't think people think about crime or danger until it happens close to home. And having one of your friends' lives be taken in your hometown, you just never think that it's gonna happen. And then when it does, my perspective has definitely changed. And it's not to live life in fear, but it is good to be aware. And I think Ryan continues to teach us through everything. And it was an extremely heartbreaking event, like I said, and should never have happened, I think. I don't know what that looks like going forward for our city, but it definitely continues to change the way I think about the city of Columbus.
There are people that have no clue what happens when they pull that trigger. Some of them, quite frankly, live in a video world reality. There's not an eraser on the end of that gun. It's over. I've sat in court many, many, many times and seen the families of the defendants or those that were convicted. I mean, they're torn apart too. I mean, I've seen mothers, mother of the guy who shot, mother of the guy who got shot. At the end of the day, they're fighting the same thing. They both have lost their sons. It's tragic.
I am 22 years old and I have lived here my whole life, so 22 years. Growing up in Columbus was interesting because there was definitely a shift from, I would say when I was old enough to, walk around, be a kid, from like 5 to year 10, I was allowed to play outside, ride my bike outside, I would say Lake Bottom Park here in Columbus was considered relatively safe, and so I had a pretty normal childhood where I never felt in danger, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to live my daily life just as anybody else, but as I said, I always try to have somebody with me. I really try not to go anywhere if it's dark, especially not alone. So I guess my my main concern is always having somebody with me, and I always text, either my mom or my dad or a friend just to let them know when I'm leaving, when I get home, just because you never know what can happen even on the road. Yeah. I think communication between just residents of Phoenix City and Columbus in general, a lot of people are not aware, I feel like, or educated, like myself. I don't think that I'm extremely educated on everything that's going around in both Phoenix City and Columbus, Georgia, but I feel like the more that we communicate with one another and have conversations about what's going on and how we can look out for one another, I think that's a good first step, an easy, practical first step for everybody. I think there's always hope. I never would say that we're a hopeless population. We are dealing with humanity, and that looks different from person to person, and so I don't know if there will ever be one direct solution for something as big of a problem as what we're dealing with, because I think it is just kind of human nature shining through, and so it might not be as simple as to put certain laws or boundaries in place, but being human with one another, listening to one another. Yeah, I think it's a difficult and complicated situation, but I definitely think that there's always hope.